We have a lot of news to cover in today's video. We have a suspension for Dante Fabbro. We also have a return of Artemi Panarin. Plus, we're taking a look at some trade rumors, looking at teams like the Maple Leafs, the Oilers, the Blue Jackets, the Sabres, the Red Wings, and more. We'll get into all that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have a variety of news to talk about here today. I want to kick things off with the news that Artemi Panarin has returned. Breadman is back with the New York Rangers. Now, he's not going to play immediately, obviously, after being off for the past few weeks dealing with some personal matters. He is going to need a little bit of time to skate and practice with the team first, but it was nice to see that he did join the team for practice today, back on the ice, so he should be back in action here in a fairly short order. I would think probably in the next game or two, after having a few practices, is likely when he'll jump back in the lineup. I'm sure they love the thought of having Panarin back in the lineup, so welcome back, Artemi Panarin. I hope everything is well on the personal side of things after dealing with the I guess the issues or the accusations out of Russia, which appear to be false, but I guess, well, I don't know if we'll hear any more about that or where the status of that sits at the moment. We also had word today from NHL Player Safety that Preds defenseman Dante Fabbro has been suspended for 2 games based on a pretty vicious elbow on Canes forward Brock McGinn. We saw last night he went into the boards with his elbow up quite high, got McGinn directly in the head. There's no doubt it was direct head contact. There was a call on the ice for elbowing, but obviously due to the fact that you know, it was certainly an avoidable situation. He could have tucked his arm in more, which would have made more body contact than head. It was pretty good amount of force behind it as well. So he has been suspended 2 games by NHL Player Safety. So that's essentially an illegal elbow to the head, but that's what they're calling it, is elbowing, suspended 2 games. So that's another blow for the Predators, who are certainly already dealing with somewhat of a depleted lineup. Now, as I mentioned as well earlier today, we talked about the breaking news about the NHL and ESPN 7-year agreement for the national TV rights for the NHL games starting next season. Of course, that's not the full package. There will be another partner involved, whether it be NBC or Fox, or one of those guys will have part of the equation here as well. But just a quick update on the financial terms. We don't have the exact confirmation of the financial numbers. However, ESPN and the NHL are both finally officially acknowledged that they do have an agreement. When I put the video out earlier today, it was based on reporting from Chris Johnson of Sportsnet, indicating that a deal had been reached. But based on several NHL hockey sources and insiders talking about what they feel the deal is worth based on what they've been hearing, it looks as though on an annual basis it's going to be an average of around $410 to $420 million. So it's going to be approximately $2.8 billion over the 7 years, which is pretty substantial. And it's also fair to say that ESPN likely is going to get more than a 50% share here, given the fact that they're actually getting 4 Stanley Cup Finals over 7 years. So they're getting quite a big chunk of this package. But like I said, it's not an exclusive deal, so there will be a second partner in there, and we're waiting for those negotiations to be finalized so we'll know what's going on. Many feel right now that NBC likely will retain the other portion of this, likely move things between the USA Network and Peacock streaming and you know, whatever else they have access to, but it's likely not going to be on NBC Sports, of course, because that station is being shut down. But some big money there. Now, of course, that's pretty huge business for the NHL, and certainly is going to go a long way to helping them close the gap on the revenues that they've been losing during the pandemic. It's not going to fix everything. It's not going to make up completely, but it'll certainly put a dent into what they're missing out on over the last year. Plus, as they get slowly fans back in attendance, they get things ramping back up here. But I mean, the other thing too is based on the NBC deal they have now, that's more than double on an annual basis what they'll be getting for TV rights from ESPN, and that's not even factoring in the other part of it. So imagine that's a substantial increase since the NBC's had that contract. So that's huge money for the NHL and will certainly help with the salary cap. I don't see there being an increase for still a couple years, but it might not be quite as long as the original thoughts process were going on, because obviously they didn't have terms of this kind of deal yet. So that's really big news from the financial side of things for the NHL. I've seen a variety of opinions on ESPN. We're not here to talk about whether or not you like ESPN as a platform or not, or whether or not you'll be tuning in, but that's a lot of money, and I hope that they put together a good product to help the people in the U.S. enjoy the game and grow the game more, because there's still tons of opportunity for growth of hockey in the U.S. market for sure, especially with the new franchise of Seattle coming in. There should be a lot of hype and a lot of fanfare, hopefully, around it for the coming summer and into next season. Now let's jump into today's trade rumors. There's been a lot of rumors coming out of various reporters, a lot of it through The Athletic lately, due to the fact that we're getting closer and closer to the NHL trade deadline. Pretty much almost every franchise is slowly getting their own article based on their own beat reporters, kind of suggesting who they feel is the most likely trade-up players from those franchises, as they're getting more and more intel from their inside sources. And one thing that we're going to talk about a bit today is Eric Staal. There's been certainly talk out of Buffalo. We know they're going to be wide open for business. That's been confirmed by Elliot Friedman. We've heard comments from GM Kevin Adams. And there's no doubt the Sabres will be making some deals and selling off some players, and Eric Staal is bound to be one of those players. Now, apparently two teams that are reportedly interested in Staal is the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Edmonton Oilers for sure. There's also some American teams in the mix as well. You could throw to a degree the Penguins, and even the Blackhawks apparently are reportedly kicking some tires on the possibility of acquiring the veteran center as well. He's made it known he's certainly open to a trade. He was really caught off guard being traded from Minnesota to Buffalo before the current season, and I don't really think he was overly thrilled about it. He's gone there. He's tried to make the best of it, but clearly he's open to getting out of there, since things have not gone overly well, not only for himself but as a team mostly. So those are the teams looking for him. Now, according to reports, though, that's not the only forward that the Leafs are looking at. I've seen more news today suggesting that they're really honing in on possibly Granlund from the Nashville Predators, and I did see another report as well from one of my Twitter sources indicating that they're kind of kicking tires on Anaheim Ducks forward Rickard Rakell. Now, Rickard is a very versatile guy. He can play all three forward positions. He can be a center. He can be a winger. Obviously, it comes with a decent contract, but obviously he's a former 30-goal scorer who's looking to find his game here, and right now could probably benefit from a change of scenery. Now, from the Leafs standpoint, they might prefer to go the route for players that are going to be more of a pure rental, but it's certainly another guy to look at. I mean, the Leafs, I think, are pretty confident to be adding at the deadline. A top six forward makes the most sense, and so based on all these different reports we've come across from various NHL reporters and sources out there, these are the three players that they're really zoned in on. But Staal's name has popped up here a lot recently and being heavily discussed by many teams. So I fully suspect he will work with those teams for his no trade. He does have a 10-team no trade list, so I'm not sure if any of those teams are on the list, but I'm not sure how picky he'll be on where he goes, but he's certainly likely going to be moved and will get moved along. Now, in Rakell's case in Anaheim, Frank Saravalli moved him all the way up to number 3 on the TSN trade bait board today. And like I said, there is reports out there that teams have been calling and inquiring, and the Leafs are one of those teams. So we'll see. I know Kyle Dubas is going to have his work cut out for him. Obviously, they're tight up against the cap. Hard to say what goes in for money. Obviously, what goes in has to come out as well to level things out. But there certainly is no shortage of good options to be looking at here ahead of the NHL trade deadline. Now, Elliot Friedman's also made another note here regarding the Edmonton Oilers. As mentioned in his latest 31 Thoughts blog, and I've heard him mention it on the radio as well, talking about how he feels that the Edmonton Oilers, if it's not now during the NHL season before the deadline, then in the offseason, he feels a trade is pretty much inevitable between the Oilers and the Blue Jackets, where he sees Elvis Merzlikins heading to Edmonton. Obviously, Mike Smith's a UFA this summer, so he's likely going to be departing and not returning, and that he feels Elvis is the guy that they're going to target. Now, they're going to have themselves a situation in Edmonton with a tight salary cap situation. Obviously, signing Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is very important. They have some other players that are going to need new deals or need to be replaced, including some defensemen like Tyson Barrie and Adam Larson. So whether or not they return is a question mark for sure. And obviously, to make this kind of acquisition, they'd have to send something out to kind of level out what's coming in. But certainly Elvis is a goalie that he feels that the Jackets are bound to move. Between he and Korpisalo, he's got the higher salary. Obviously, he's a very mature goaltender, played in Europe quite a long time before coming over to the NHL. And I do feel that is one of the two goalies that is likely going to get moved. And after what we saw last year in the playoffs in the bubble, I think it's pretty clear that Korpisalo is their guy that they would prefer to keep longer term. Obviously, when it comes to Columbus, like I said, he's got the cheaper contract. He's gained a lot of valuable playoff experience last year. And as good as Elvis is, I think they can hopefully get some other assets out of a team like Edmonton where they could benefit to get some good young players maybe in return. I don't know what the asking price would be, but Friedman sees Elvis being an Edmonton Oiler in the not too distant future, either by the deadline or next season. But probably during the offseason is more likely, because the Oilers are expected to likely run with the goaltending tandem they have now. Unless the Jackets would be willing to take one of those goalies on, it wouldn't be likely that we'd see that before the offseason. Now, staying with the Jackets here, there is another report from Aaron Portzline, who covers the Jackets for The Athletic, that Max Domi is available. Now, he's not the only Blue Jackets player that's out there. Obviously, David Savard's another one getting a lot of attention. It's quite possible Savard, the pending UFA, does get moved. But Max Domi was just acquired and signed by the Jackets after being traded in that deal with Montreal for Josh Anderson. We know how things are working out on the Habs side of things. Anderson has been a terrific player for them, really returning to form and even taking his game up to new levels, and is having a terrific year for the Habs, whereas Max Domi just hasn't really fit in. I think they're having trouble right now kind of figuring out what he is. He was given an opportunity to play a little bit of center, but mostly a winger, and slid all the way down to the fourth line. Just hasn't really fit with John Tortorella's system. The Jackets, we know, are looking for a center, and they've had some players that they were hoping would be centers and are just not turning out to be that, or at least not consistently right now. Obviously, trading Pierre-Luc Dubois was a big deal for them. Obviously, it was great to get Laine and Roslovic, but it left a big hole. Of course, Roslovic, I said, got off to a great start, but he's kind of cooled down. He was kind of forced into playing number one center minutes, and he did okay for a little bit, but obviously it's not really the best spot for him. Tortorella cut him some slack in an interview recently and said, you know what, it really wasn't fair to him. He was kind of forced into that position due to lack of depth, but he did okay for a bit, but he hasn't really, really been a consistent center iceman for a long time, and to play that high in the lineup and getting the tough matchups, it was certainly not an easy task, and he certainly felt that they don't really know what Jack Roslovic is yet. He's not convinced that he's 100% an NHL center iceman. He could be a winger. So again, another case like Domi, who has been kind of forced into playing center at times, but then it keeps getting moved back to the wing because it's not a consistent spot for him where he's been able to excel. Same goes for youngster Alex Texier. They don't know if he's going to be a center yet. So there's a lot of potential, but not really a lot of certainty right there. And they need somebody who can log some top 6 minutes consistently at that center spot. So as much as Laine and Roslovic has helped out, having that hole from Dubois has hurt just as much or more. So far the Jets are looking great. The Jackets, not so much. Even though Laine has put up some decent numbers, he is pointless. I think it's 8 or 9 games now. He's certainly been trending in a not so good direction. So we'll see, but Max Domi's tenure with Columbus may not last too long. His name is out there, and he is available if the right deal comes along. And lastly here, I want to touch on the Red Wings. The Athletic's Craig Custance is reporting that he feels that Steve Yzerman in Detroit would be willing to trade one of his top forwards, and feels like it's a pretty good, decent chance that Anthony Mantha could very well find himself traded. There certainly would be a fair bit of interest in the winger, who's 6'5", well over 200 pounds, is a huge guy. At some point in his career, he hopes to find that consistency to be the 25 to 30 goal scorer. I mean, he did have a couple of solid years with the Red Wings, but he's battled a lot of injuries. He's having an okay season so far on a weak team right now. But Mantha is a player going into next year, will be 27 years old, which is not old at all. But given the fact that that team is still going to be 3 or 4 years away from being more competitive and possibly challenging for playoffs as they go through this rebuild, do you want him to be near the end of his contract, going on 31, 32 years old? Does it make sense to keep a player like that right now? You need some vets, but he could be a guy who they could possibly get some other younger players to kind of get somebody, if they can, that's 21, 22 years old, get a little bit younger, save a little bit of money, and see what they can do here. There's been no shortage of interest in a guy like Mantha. He would definitely be moved in a heartbeat, as I know there would be teams calling for a huge winger with the possibility of scoring 25 to 30 goals. Look at what Montreal did with Josh Anderson. Prime example. I mean, obviously they're not the exact same player, but similar enough that there would be lots of interest. So right now, I don't have any links to any particular teams kicking tires on Mantha. It's just Craig Custance of The Athletic saying he believes Yzerman would be willing to move out at least one of the top forwards on the team right now. Mantha's the most likely guy given his contract, given it 3 more years, at well over $5 million. Battled a lot of injuries. If he can get a good return on him, he could certainly pull the trigger, help the team get a little bit younger, and give Mantha a chance to have a little bit more of a competitive team to play with before he gets too late into his career. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's rumors. We're getting closer to the NHL trade deadline, and as I've said several times, given the fact that players need to isolate and quarantine in various different locations, I would suspect we're bound to see a little bit more activity here in the next week or two, so that players have a chance to be going through their isolation period and get into lineups before it gets too late into the year. So let me know your thoughts on something we discussed today down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.